A stunning development has emerged on the international stage that could potentially reshape the trajectory of the war in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has confirmed that a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is now on the table, and this announcement comes at a time when Washington has issued an urgent call to the Kremlin. This double twist in the unfolding drama has raised questions about motives, timing, and the broader implications for global security, and it deserves a closer look. What exactly does such a meeting signify? What dynamics are at play behind the scenes, and how might this ripple across Europe, NATO, and beyond? When a head of state like Putin signals openness to meeting his wartime counterpart, it is never a casual gesture. Russia has previously dismissed or downplayed the idea of direct talks with Zelenskyy, preferring to negotiate through intermediaries or frame Ukraine as lacking independence. The confirmation of a possible face-to-face encounter signals either a shift in strategy or a calculated play designed to manage global perceptions. In design terms, this move functions as both a political performance and a tactical maneuver. It projects confidence to Russia's domestic audience by suggesting Putin is in control of the narrative while also serving as a potential off-ramp for mounting international pressure. For Zelenskyy, agreeing to such a meeting carries immense symbolic weight. He has consistently emphasized that Ukraine will not accept peace at the expense of its sovereignty, territory, or freedom. Sitting across the table from Putin would send a message to Ukrainians and to the world that Kyiv remains central to any resolution. At the same time, Zelenskyy faces the performance challenge of avoiding any appearance of conceding to Russia's demands. His core design feature is resilience, a refusal to bend under pressure, so the way he frames and presents himself in this meeting would be as crucial as the content of the talks themselves. The urgent call from Washington to the Kremlin adds another layer of intrigue. It is no coincidence that American officials felt the need to intervene at precisely this moment. Washington has consistently maintained that any negotiations must occur on Ukraine's terms, not dictated by Russia. By placing this call, U.S. leadership is signaling that while they support diplomacy, they are wary of Russia attempting to exploit the optics of the meeting. It also suggests concern that Moscow may be preparing to use this moment to fracture Western unity or push for sanctions relief without offering meaningful concessions. In performance aspects, what we are witnessing is a carefully orchestrated theater of diplomacy. Russia's announcement plays to its strengths: unpredictability, projection of strength, and manipulation of timing. The Kremlin understands that by confirming a possible meeting with Zelenskyy, it diverts attention from battlefield setbacks and economic struggles, creating instead an aura of statesmanship. The U.S. call is a counter-performance, designed to remind Russia that any diplomatic path will still be closely monitored and shaped by Washington's influence. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy stands at the center of this triangular design, balancing his role as the face of Ukrainian resistance with his duty to explore avenues that could save lives and secure Ukraine's future. Looking at the unique selling points of this unfolding scenario, the first is the very fact that direct dialogue between Putin and Zelenskyy, once thought unthinkable, is suddenly being discussed openly. That in itself reshapes expectations. Second, the Washington intervention highlights the reality that this is not just a war between two countries. It is a global conflict of narratives, power, and influence. Third, the potential of this meeting lies not in immediate peace, but in testing the waters for what each side is willing to put on the table and where their red lines truly lie. The technical detail behind these moves lies in the timing. Russia has been facing significant strain on the battlefield, particularly in eastern Ukraine, where troop morale and logistics have been stretched. Ukraine, while continuing to receive Western military aid, is under pressure from its own population to end the suffering. Both leaders are under internal and external stress. By signaling openness to talks, Putin attempts to show strength while quietly acknowledging the toll of war. For Zelenskyy, Entertaining such a meeting allows him to demonstrate diplomatic maturity to Western allies, showing that Ukraine is not the obstacle to peace. On the U.S. side, the design element revolves around deterrence and reassurance. By urgently reaching out to the Kremlin, Washington sends a dual message. To Russia, that any manipulation of diplomacy will not go unchecked, and to Ukraine, that American backing remains steadfast. This performance aspect is not just about the immediate call, but about the continued layering of U.S. involvement across military, economic, and political fronts. The potential outcomes of this meeting, should it happen, are worth dissecting. One possibility is that it results in little more than a symbolic handshake and a reiteration of hardened positions. That, however, would still carry significance because it breaks the ice of direct engagement. Another outcome could involve limited agreements, perhaps on prisoner exchanges, humanitarian corridors, or energy transit, small but important steps that could build momentum. The most ambitious possibility, though still remote, would be the opening of a roadmap toward a negotiated settlement. Such a roadmap would require painful compromises, the kind both leaders have so far resisted, but it could at least initiate discussions about the parameters of peace. From a design standpoint, each actor in this triangle has to balance internal messaging with external optics. For Putin, meeting Zelenskyy risks appearing to acknowledge Ukraine as a legitimate equal, a contradiction to his long-standing narrative that Ukraine is a puppet state. For Zelenskyy, meeting Putin risks alienating Ukrainians who see negotiations as betrayal, unless he frames it carefully as a step toward victory through diplomacy. For Washington, allowing this meeting to happen means managing expectations within NATO and ensuring allies remain aligned, particularly those in Europe who are more eager for de-escalation. What makes this scenario especially compelling is that it is not just about the immediate war. It is about testing the limits of international order. Can a leader accused of war crimes sit across from the president of the nation he invaded and be treated as a legitimate partner in dialogue? Can Washington, while supplying weapons to Kyiv, also tolerate negotiations that might lead to concessions to Moscow? Can Zelenskyy maintain his image as a wartime leader while stepping into the more restrained role of a negotiator? These are the key performance tests that will define the outcome of this development. Another layer is the role of Europe, NATO, and other global players. The European Union, weary of economic strain from the war, would likely welcome any hint of dialogue. Turkey, which has previously hosted talks, may again present itself as a mediator. China, observing closely, could interpret this moment as proof that its calls for peace talks are gaining traction. Each of these players adds complexity to the design of the diplomatic landscape, making this potential meeting more than just a bilateral event. At the same time, risks remain enormous. Putin could use the prospect of talks as a stalling tactic to regroup militarily. Zelenskyy could face political backlash at home if talks are seen as legitimizing Russia's aggression. Washington could be criticized if it appears to pressure Ukraine into concessions. And yet, even with these risks, the fact that all three actors are engaged in this diplomatic choreography shows how war often evolves into a contest of both weapons and words. Ultimately, the confirmation of a possible Putin-Zelenskyy meeting, combined with the urgent call from Washington, represents a pivotal moment in the conflict. It highlights the blend of strategy, symbolism, and performance that defines modern geopolitics. Each move is calculated not just for immediate gain, but for long-term positioning. And while the path ahead is uncertain, the very idea of such a meeting has already changed the conversation, reminding the world that even in the darkest moments of war, the possibility of dialogue can still alter the battlefield's design.